Hello, my bookish darlings. It is time for an annual tradition, the mid-year book freakout tag. The tag was originally created by a pair of booktubers, Chammy and Earl Grey Reads. I don't believe Chammy is a booktuber anymore, but you can check out their channels. I'll have links below. And my darlings, if you do not know who I am, where have you been? I am the booktube goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. So let's go ahead and rush through these questions. Question 1, the best book you've read so far in 2022? Well, the Green Bone Trilogy by Fonda Lee. Not to be confused to Jane Fonda, and I do not believe they are related at all. But the Green Bone Trilogy is a contemporary fantasy that sort of, in my opinion, seems to really capture the Cold War in terms of fantasy from the perspective of a smaller nation who happens to control jade, which is the only source of magic in this world. It is a fascinating read. There are so many layers. I did a whole video on it. I'll put it up here if you're interested. And I highly recommend you check out the Green Bone Saga. Number 2, the best sequel you've read so far in 2022. Well, I came across the Enola Holmes books by Nancy Springer, and I read all of them. I read 7 of them. So I read a bunch of sequels. I think these are delightful middle grade reads. I do not think they are young adult. But if you've only seen the Netflix series with Emma Watson, I can understand why you may think it's young adult because they leaned into young adult tropes, but trust me, Enola Holmes is middle grade. I will just name all the books in order because the titles are delightful. The first book is The Case of the Missing Marquess, then The Case of the Left-Handed Lady, The Case of the Bizarre Bouquets, The Case of the Peculiar Pink Fan, The Case of the Cryptic Crinoline, The Case of the Gypsy Goodbye, and finally, Enola Holmes and the Black Barouche. If you like middle grade books with a strong female lead, Enola Holmes is the younger sister of Sherlock Holmes, who has run away to start her own detective business, and she does it quite well. I'm not going to say any more because I think I'm going to do a video devoted to Enola Holmes. New release you haven't read yet but want to. That is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. Now, I ran across this book in Shelve It or Shove It, where I pick books based solely on their covers, and this cover was disgusting, so I did not pick it up. But since then, I've seen other booktubers really rave about this, notably C'est Que Vie, my booktube drag queen sister. And it is a horror novel delving into gender identity, I believe. I should look this up and find out more, but it is a novel I am now very curious to read. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year, that is going to be Babel, or The Necessity of Violence in Arcane History of the Oxford Translators Revolution by R.F. Kuang, who wrote the Poppy Wars trilogy, one of my favorite fantasy trilogies of recent years. And the Poppy Wars, by the way, is a dark fantasy, and I believe it's an anti-hero story, which you don't see very often, and usually it's not very popular, but Poppy Wars is for good reason. Babel came onto my radar because it is in the Books to Look Forward to video I did a while ago, where I went through a list of new release fantasy books in the coming year, and Babel was prominently displayed. Also, Elias, the booktuber Elias, mentioned it when I did a retrospective of his channel. Now, the setting for Babel seems totally different than the Poppy Wars, so I'm kind of very intrigued about that. I'm wondering how dark it's going to be. I hope it's going to be dark, and I am trying not to look up too much with it because I don't want spoilers. Biggest disappointment. It is Echo by Thomas Olduvelt. Oh boy. I was so excited to read a horror novel that I picked in Shelve It or Shove It. And the first chapter, or prologue, was so spooky. I was so excited to read it. And then I did, and I had to push myself to finish it. Darlings, this is a warning to those of you who write about something you love. Watch out, because you could go overboard, which this author did with mountaineering. Apparently, he is an avid mountaineer, and my mountaineering days are long behind me. In fact, they never existed. So all the details and trivia and dense, long paragraphs on mountaineering bored me to death, which should not happen in a horror novel. Big disappointment. Biggest surprise! The Wind-Up Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi. This was recommended to me on my live stream. Several people recommended it to me, and I was in the mood for science fiction. I was thirsty for some science fiction, so I picked it up, and there were a lot of things I was not a fan of. I am not a fan of tons of points of view where every chapter switches to a different point of view. The titular character, the wind-up girl, was barely in the first half of the novel. She's actually a metaphor, and none of the characters were very likable. So as I was reading, I was thinking, this is going to be 3.5 to 4 stars. I'll probably round it to 4 stars, but then the ending got me. The ending made it a 5-star read. What a pleasant surprise, and what a wonderful novel. Favorite new author? Well, let's just say Paolo Bacigalupi. Am I close? No? The writing was so fresh, the ideas so original, the characters so interesting, although unlikable. I am curious about this author and what he has in store for future novels. Newest Fictional Crush. Usually I do not have crushes on characters, but if I had to choose, it would have to be a gay character, and I'm going to go with Emery of the Jade Wars. Very complicated character, very central character, especially in the later or second book and third book. But if there is any potential significant other for me, it would have to be Emery. Newest favorite character. Oh, well, let's go with Enola Holmes. I love her. I cannot read enough of Enola Holmes. Book that made you cry. Well, no book made me cry in the first half of 2022. It is pretty rare that one does, but I will go with the Jade Wars trilogy, Green Bones trilogy. Why did they not name the series Jade something? Jade is in the title of every book, but they went with Green Bones. Whatever. But I love the series, and it gave me the most feels. Book that made you happy. I'll go with Enola Holmes, because there's nothing like a fun middle grade read that makes me happy. The most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received. Well, since I only get ebooks nowadays, it has to be a toss-up between Gallant by V.E. Schwab and Hotel Magnifique by Emily Taylor. Not only are the covers beautiful, but the books are good. They didn't rise to my favorites, but they are still decent reads, both of them. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? Well, I already said Babel by R.F. Kuang, but I also want to read more science fiction. I read so much fantasy these days. My goodness, I used to be an avid science fiction reader. And I am looking at Tchaikovsky, which is highly recommended by Fit to be Read, who is our science fiction guru. So I'm going to look at Children of Time, which I believe is the first novel Fit to be Read has recommended, or that we should start with, and then we will go from there. If you have any science fiction recommendations, please leave them in the comments below. I'm not going to tag anyone. I'm doing this mid-year tag late in the year, but please feel free to do it and search around. There are a lot of people doing this tag. Please don't forget to like this video, and darlings, subscribe to me. If you haven't subscribed already, what are you waiting for? An invitation? Until we meet again, may all the books you read be blessed.